Former Trump-supporting Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney just gave her first formal interview since she and her infamous conservative father, Dick Cheney, formally endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris in the upcoming election. And during this interview, Cheney shut down a number of bad faith MAGA talking points, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to play in this video. Before I do, I want to establish a couple of things off the bat. I've said most of this in previous videos, but I think it's an important disclaimer to add anytime we talk about Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger or Joe Walsh or former Trump-supporting Republicans. Number one, Liz Cheney is not a rhino. Liz Cheney is not a Republican in name only. She is a lifelong conservative Republican who served as a Republican Congresswoman. And by the way, when she served in Congress, when Donald Trump was president, she backed his legislative agenda 93% of the time, which is a stunning figure. It outmatches Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, and other current and lifelong MAGA Republicans. That's how devoted she was to not just the conservative movement, but the Republican Party as an institution, even with Trump at the head. What ultimately turned her against him was his behavior during the 2020 election, particularly on January 6th. So she became a prominent never-Trumper and suffered politically as a consequence. She lost re-election. She was formally censured by the Republican Party for daring to defy the cult leader. Okay. The other thing I want to say is because she is a lifelong conservative and was a Trump supporter, even when Donald Trump was obviously who he was, not some sort of Machiavellian mastermind, but an obvious pathological liar, grifter, and ideologically inconsistent populist, I don't beatify or deify Liz Cheney. I think she's on a road to redemption. I applaud her for what she has done since then at great political cost, but I also think she should apologize if she hasn't done so for obviously taking the political shortcut of backing Trump in the first place, because everything she says about Trump now applied to Trump when she supported him. Like Adam Kinzinger, she should acknowledge, yeah, I knew who Trump was. I suspected who Trump was, but unfortunately, I was so disingenuously partisan, I put it aside for the sake of my party's supremacy. I regret that choice. That was a tremendous lapse of judgment, and I know I need to work aggressively to restore the people's trust in me for setting principle aside for the sake of Donald Trump. So I just want to make that very clear. However, I think as a prominent conservative, as the daughter of Dick Cheney, one of the most infamous Republicans in American history, I think her principled criticisms of Trump and her current party have enormous weight. So I want to play some of these clips of her recent interview on ABC since she and her father formally endorsed the vice president.
So bottom line, why did you make this decision to support Harris, and why did you do it now?
Yeah, I've been voting for 40 years. My first vote I ever cast was for Ronald Reagan in 1984. I've never voted for a Democrat.
Wow.
And it tells you, I think, the stakes in this election. Donald Trump presents a challenge and a threat fundamentally to the republic. We see it on a daily basis. Somebody who was willing to use violence in order to attempt to seize power, to stay in power. Someone who represents unrecoverable catastrophe, frankly, in my view. And we have to do everything possible to ensure that he doesn't, that he's not reelected. Given how close this race is, in my view, again, it's not enough. You have many Republicans out there who are saying, well, we're not going to vote for him, but we will write someone else in. Right. And I think that this time around, that's not enough, that it's important to actually cast a vote for Vice President Harris.
Because she is the only viable alternative. And I totally agree. Now, you contrast what Liz Cheney's saying here to somebody like John Bolton, who is, again, a lifelong conservative Republican who served as national security advisor for multiple Republican administrations, including Donald Trump, I might add. Well, now he is also in the same boat that he is condemning Donald Trump based on Trump's stupidity and his narcissism and his authoritarian impulses. But John Bolton will not vote for Vice President Harris, or at least that's what he said. He said that he will vote for neither for Trump nor Harris, and he'll write someone in. A third-party write-in will not win this election. A third-party write-in will only make it more likely that one of the two candidates becomes president. And instead, what he should do, a rational person who recognizes Trump as a narcissist and a moron and an authoritarian, they should assign their vote to the best possible way to defeat Trump. And that's what Liz Cheney's saying. The best way to do that is to vote for the only politically, electorally viable alternative, which is Vice President Harris. I totally agree. And I like the fact that she's making it very clear. It's not enough to not vote for Trump. I am calling on all Trump critics in the conservative Republican movement to not only vote for the vice president, but to endorse her. Another clip.
I have never viewed this as a policy election.
Right.
But I think that it's a very important point. If you look at Vice President Harris's speech, for example, at the Democratic convention, it is a speech that Ronald Reagan could have given. It's a speech that George Bush could have given. It's very much an embrace and an understanding of the exceptional nature of this great nation, a love of America, a recognition that America is a special place, a recognition that we all have to work together to ensure that. And you contrast that to ensure that we maintain it. You contrast that with what we hear from Donald Trump, again, on a daily basis, that America is a failing nation, that America is a laughing stock. The trash talking of the United States of America very much is part of the message that Donald Trump is pushing. And so at the end of the day, I think it's important for people to recognize he's not a conservative. The policies that we're seeing him put forward, including, again, on an almost daily basis, this notion of embracing global tariffs, that he's going to impose 100%, 200% tariffs. That is fundamentally an anti-conservative policy. It's also a policy that I point out to friends of mine who say, well, we're going to vote for him because of his economic conservatism, will choke off global trade, will likely lead us down the path that we've seen before, for example, in the 1930s, lead to, at that point, it was the Depression. The important thing for people to remember about something like the tariffs that he's promising, including, in addition to the fact that it's disastrous policy, he can do it alone. He does not need Congress, if he were to be reelected, to impose those massive tariffs that will, in fact, kill the American economy and the global economy.
Great points all the way around. Again, number one, Donald Trump is not and has never been a conservative, right? And if Liz is watching, and she should like and subscribe if she hasn't, I'd love to talk to her. He wasn't a conservative even in his first 4 years when Liz Cheney was actively supporting him. Donald Trump is an ideologically inconsistent populist who cares only about his own aggrandizement. But she's also right in the sense that he has become even less conservative in terms of principled conservatism. He's also profligate, right? By the definition of fiscal conservatism, Donald Trump injected more in terms of the national debt than any sitting president in a 4-year term. He was more fiscally irresponsible by conservative standards by far than Barack Obama, than Joe Biden, than Bill Clinton. Certainly, Bill Clinton was the only president in modern history to balance a budget, a Democrat. So even by conservative standards, Trump is a failure, objectively. Democrats are ironically more fiscally conservative, not by much by their standards, but more fiscally conservative, certainly, than Donald Trump. So when anyone talks about, he has fiscally conservative policies, they're lying to you. They're either stupid or they're just being dishonest. Moreover, I think it's important. Liz Cheney is really good at this too. She also emphasizes the things that Donald Trump could do as president unilaterally, because I think so many people are like, well, we don't have to worry about Donald Trump, destroying democracy or doing all these crazy things because he would be hemmed in by the other two branches, which is a dubious prospect. It's kind of a silly, naive prospect to begin with. But in certain cases, we don't even have that as an option because the president has the power to impose tariffs pretty much unilaterally. So there's nothing stopping him from doing this unhinged thing. Another clip.
Back in 2019, when she was running for the Democratic nomination, she took a range of positions. Medicare for all. She suggested she would favor abolishing ICE, decriminalizing illegal border crossings, a whole range of issues that she has now, apparently changed. Would you still have been able to endorse Kamala Harris if it was the Kamala Harris of 2019 and 2020?
Look, I think that she has changed in a number of very important ways on issues that matter. And I would encourage independents to look at where she is on these policy issues today. I would encourage independents to compare where she is today with where Donald Trump is on these issues. And so I think from a policy perspective, it is very important to recognize the change, to recognize that she understands that this election is going to require a coalition of people from across the political spectrum supporting her. And that also necessitates an understanding that you've got to govern for all of those people. And on top of all of that, the Republicans have nominated somebody who is depraved, somebody who shows us every day that he has tendencies and he's willing to embrace things that are fundamentally a danger to this nation and to our Constitution. So the choice, in my view, is not a close one.
But have you?
So I liked some of that answer. I don't like a lot of it because his question was, okay, well, let's say she hadn't become more moderate on some of these issues. If she was as progressive as Republicans want to paint her as, would you still vote for her? In my opinion, an honest constitutional conservative or somebody who just supports the Constitution, period, should say yes, of course, because even if I disagree with this person on policy, we can survive policy with which I disagree because we can just elect them out the next time. But what we can't survive potentially is an authoritarian like Donald Trump. And again, I say this as somebody, one of the thought experiments I try to conduct myself is if we were back in 2012, which was the first election in which I could vote, and it had been President Obama seeking re-election against Governor Mitt Romney. And I mean, I voted for President Obama because I thought he was the better candidate. But I'm just trying to imagine if Obama, who had more policies with which I agree, also did some of the authoritarian things that Trump did or attempted to do, like I'm not going to respect free and fair elections. The election will be rigged if I lose. If he conspired to steal the election from government, like Governor Romney, all these things. Could I support Barack Obama over a good faith Republican? And here's the thing. I think Mitt Romney's record when he was running in 2025, I mean, it was he had a history of bipartisanship because he was the Republican governor of a blue state, but also that was when the Tea Party was at its height. So Governor Romney ran to the right in certain respects during the 2012 election in order to appeal and galvanize his base. So when people say, oh, Mitt Romney is a moderate, I think overall he is, and certainly a good faith moderate in the sense I don't think he would ever shepherd in, an age of of authoritarianism the way that Trump would. But the bottom line is he was many of the policies he advocated for at the time were relatively far right. So if I had a choice between Obama, whose policies I agreed with, and Romney, but Romney was going to respect democracy come hell or high water, and Obama had an authoritarian impulse in him which suggested he wouldn't, then my vote probably would have gone to Romney. And certainly if Obama had anywhere close to the authoritarian impulses of Trump. You see what I'm saying? Because policy is really, really important, but at best it's the second most important thing because you have to preserve the quote unquote system, the democratic republic, in order to change and implement policy in the first place, right? Like it has to be superseding. And so I was kind of disappointed with Liz Cheney's answer there. She should have said no matter what Vice President Harris's policies were, simply because she is a faithful officer of the Constitution and is not an authoritarian, I would have supported her anyway. I digress. One last clip.
Trump has obviously made retribution a theme of his campaign, and he's talked about prosecuting you. He's done it a lot. And he did it just again after you endorsed Kamala Harris. Are you worried about what will happen specifically to you if he gets elected president again?
I don't think about it in those terms. I think about it in terms of what's going to happen to our country. It's not personal from my perspective, with one exception, and that is that I'm a mother. I'm the mother of 5 kids. And it is personal to me that my children grow up in a country where they know they can depend on the peaceful transfer of power, that they grow up in a country where their elected officials put fidelity to the Constitution first. That's how it's personal to me. It's personal to me when I listen to, fellow Republicans in the past say things to me like, well, it's fine. There are guardrails. He can't do that much damage. It's just simply not true.
It is simply not true. She's 100% on the money there. And I think perhaps more than any conservative former Republican, I think more than Walsh and Kinzinger, and they've done quite a bit. I think she has been pretty consistent on that particular message to discuss the potential vulnerabilities of the guardrails. So listen, again, I'm happy to have, former Trump supporting Republicans backing the Democrats, backing the vice president. I do believe that a coalition, an anti-Trump coalition, has to be very broad to defeat him. So the more the merrier. I also don't want to lionize Liz Cheney. I think she's on the road to redemption, but there's still a ways to go. And I'm looking forward to seeing how far she's willing to take it. And in the meantime, you let me know what you think in the comments.